Real estate agents, you're going to want to stop and save this even if you have time to watch it right now. I'm about to give you a tutorial on CMAs you've never seen ever done before. See, on my social media, I've constantly told you guys that your CMAs that you're putting out, respectfully, are garbage. The reason why is it's based on dated information or it lacks adjustments and different things that really drive it in. And more importantly, you are an analyst, you are a consultant, you are handling somebody's biggest single investment of their life, actually starting out or continuing forward on their building wealth. So they don't pay you to guess, they pay you to get it right. And I'm going to show you how to dial that in a little bit more so that you can do a better job of managing expectations so you don't have to manage emotions. Check this out. See, the things that the CMAs are lacking is one, we're not time adjusting the comps. What does that mean? That means that we need to time adjust, meaning adjust the comparable properties that are in the CMA from their individual pending date, their escrow date, to today based on what happened in the market. Example, if comparable number one that you're using in your CMA went into escrow 3 months ago and the market has shifted down 3%, you're going to want to take 3% off of that comp to show what it would sell for in today's market. Example, you would sit there and say it sold for $700,000. You subtract 3% off of that, and that's what that comp would sell for today. Also, when we're talking about listings, a lot of people don't pay attention to listings. And you've heard appraisers before say listings don't matter. That's not true. If listings didn't matter, tell me why in a down market, the lenders require actives and pendings to show where the market is. Here's point blank. Solds are yesterday's value, pendings are today, and actives are tomorrow. They all tell a story. But when you take the list price to sales price ratio in the neighborhood, what do I mean by that? It means what did somebody ask for versus what did they get in the market? You've got to take that percentage, whether that's up or down. Let's say that the market traditionally in that specific neighborhood sells for 7% over list. So the listings that you have in your CMA, we want to adjust those up 7% to show what their predicted exit will be. Additionally, with the CMA, we want to set expectations again, right? So you want to sit there and say, not what the days on the market of the solds, that's an indicator. But in a market that's shifting up or shifting down, especially in a market that's shifting down, the solds represent yesterday's marketing time. The pendings represent today's marketing time, and the actives show tomorrow's. So in a shifting market, you use the sales, but look at how long did it take the pendings to go into escrow? You should know this before every meeting. How long is it taking the actives? Because the sold properties might be going into escrow. They might have went into escrow, in 7 days. But wait, the pendings are at 17. Oh, but wait, the actives are at 35 days and still counting. So how we set the expectations with the buyer or seller, especially with the seller, is we say, hey, yes, I know Johnny down the street sold their house in 7 days, but right now the market's shifting a little bit. Actives are staying on the market for at least 35 days. So if we don't get an acceptable offer within 35 days, then we're going to then talk about a price reduction. But until then, let's just get the house up. I'm going to do open houses every weekend. I'm going to do all my marketing strategy, and we're just going to sit back. We're not going to panic. We're just going to wait. This keeps the emotion out of it because it relieves the anxiety, especially for listing agents, right? When you sit there, you're like, wait, my house has been on the market for 12 days. I've got nothing. I've got 3 showings and there's a ghost town, right? Well, if you're studying the actives and you see, oh, in this specific market segment, what do I mean by that? In this segment that, say our house is 2,000 square feet, all the properties on this side of town that are between 18 and 2,200 square feet, they're taking 41 days to go pending. Boom. Now you get to relax too, and you don't feel like an agent that's not doing their job. But let's jump into how we start and curate a better CMA. First, what you're going to do is you're going to go to your MLS and search like you normally would, right? Now, the step that I'm going to tell you, it can work across the nation. I already reached out to all my appraisers across the nation that I know, and I asked them, do you have this report inside of your MLS? Everybody collectively said yes. So let me show you. So you're going to go and check all statuses on here. Then I'm just doing this as an example. I'm going to set the building type as detached. And I'm just not going to, pick a specific area right now, but I'm just going to say 94583. Then I'm going to go 24 months for list date, for off market date, and for closing date. All right. Move me down here. Then I'm going to hit search. Now, you guys can do this. Again, I'm not here to teach you how to be a real estate agent and know the neighborhood. I'm going to show you some tricks and techniques how you find the neighborhood better. But you need to control the data, right? So if I was going to be doing this in real time on a property that I'm doing, I'm going to go and define the neighborhood during the searching the map. I don't do a 1 mile radius search. That's garbage too, because it's so misleading. You've got 5, 6, 7 different neighborhoods inside of a mile. So I would identify the neighborhood and then I come to here. I also would control the square footage. What does a 1,000 square foot buyer know about a 4,000 square foot buyer? Absolutely nothing. Macroeconomics are great for general conversations. They're not good for analytics. We want to appraise or to price things based on what's happening in the market segment, because all ships don't rise and fall at the sea at the same time. Meaning, you can't tell me what's happening off. I can't tell what's happening off the coast of Santa Monica, California, but what's happening in Newport Harbor. Let's move on. So I'm not controlling this, but this is just an example. Then we go to hit search. Now, every MLS is different. How you get here, that's the part that you've got to know for your individual MLS throughout the country. But for mine, I'm going to go here and I'm going to hit print plus. Then I'm going to select all listings. Now, let me remove this out of here. Now you're going to look for the report called 1004 MC, or it might be called market conditions. So I'm going to scroll down here and there's mine. You see that right there? Market conditions. And now I'm going to go print preview. This little report gives us so much information. You should be running these on every single property before you ever meet with the client. This is information that you should know about your neighborhood, your zip code, your city. But again, let's get away from those macroeconomics. No one cares about what's happening in the entire town. How is my property performing inside of the town? Now, we can see here, right? Across here, this gives us a lot of information that tells us the movement of the median price. So we can see 7 to 12 months ago in this area, the median price was 1.720 million. Then it dropped to 1.6. Today, it's popping back up. So we went through our winter, now we're in our spring, and now we're at 1.635. It also has our list price to sales price ratio. Hey, Anthony, why did you want us to do 24 months? Because I like to have full perspective of where the market was. Because you got to think, sellers are just like children. They only remember what they want to remember specifically. So while they have been, repurposing and pushing out all the headlines about how the market is doomed and the recession is here and all those things, they don't apply it to their own house. So they might say that when you say, hey, you know what? I'm going to list the property at 1.6. And they're like, wait, hold on. Johnny up the street sold his house for 1.8. And you're like, absolutely, you're right. But Johnny up the street sold 2 years ago and the median price was different in the neighborhood. Let's move forward. So this tells us a lot. This tells us, right, inventory levels. So we see we're at 1.3 months of inventory before. Then we dropped to a half a month in this pocket. But now we're up to 2.13 months of inventory. Now, that typically would alarm us when we're going into the winter. But just like, at the time of this recording, we are in March. We just passed Valentine's Day. But even before we got to Valentine's Day, Easter stuff was out. The market is getting ready to take off. So more people are coming to the market earlier and earlier because they want to be first and they don't want to compete. Okay. So see, the inventories are up, inventory levels are up. Volume is still down. It went from 131 sales to 64, and now it's at 31. Our list price to sales price ratio is 100% right now. 12 months ago, it was at 104. What does that mean? That means in that time, you had to write an offer at least 4% over list price to be competitive and win the property. If you wanted to write it 5 or 6, you could do that too. But you also knew not to write it 10 because you jumped out the window while the rest of the market, 131 people, consistently paid around 4% over list. But now we see over the last 6 months, we're at 100% of list. So if you want to be competitive, you could go 1% or 2% over list as long as the comps support it. But don't go into this market after 31 people have purchased homes and paid 100% of list for properly priced homes. Don't go in here and offer 95% of list, but now you're wasting your time. Real estate agents, do you see how you can teach your clients better? Okay. Now, move on. So we have that information, and now I'm going to show you how to apply it. All right, now this is where it gets tricky. Not tricky, but this is where the math comes in. Okay. So, showed you earlier that the market has increased over the last 6 months. So, let's just say you have comps that sold within the last 6 months. We've got to adjust each comp to reflect exactly what the market has done. This is the key of why the CMAs are misleading and they don't tell the true story. It's almost like we print these off. It's just like, oh, these are just numbers. And there are people, right? When we're going to a listing presentation, you have the two avatars. You have the engineer and the artist, right? The engineer, they love the data. They might even brought their own Excel sheet to you, right? And then you have the artist. But what I found in my consult calls recently is that the artist now is wanting every opinion that the professional gives to be backed up by data. So when we sit there and have this piece of paper out, the fact that I'm reading off of it and that I'm talking to them, the artist is no longer looking at the piece of paper while the engineer is still studying the data, right? So what you want to do here is you want to convert this into a percentage. You do not just say, oh, I'm going to add $35,000. No, that's not how you do that. Okay. All right. So this is just a quick way to convert a percentage. If you don't know how to do a percentage, just message me. I'll show you how to do it the right way. But this is just a backdoor kind of way. So I'm going to take 1.6, right? So I'm going to take 1.601, okay, 500 by 1.635. Again, this is just backdooring it. Don't cancel me. That tells us 98%. So that tells us that basically what's left over there, we got 2% more. Now, this is a very small change in the market, but the numbers are in the nuances, right? Now, we're going to sit there and take 2%. So if we say 98, right? So it rounds up to 98. Now that's 2% left over to get to 100, to get to whole. So now I'm going to take 2% divided by 6. That tells me that the market is moving at a rate of 0.33% per month. Let's use this as an example, okay? So let's say a went into escrow 6 months ago. I'm going to go 6 times 0.33%. Oops. I'm going to go, see here, 0.33 times 6 equals 1.98. Let's make it a little bit difficult. Let's say 4 months ago, okay? So 4 times 3 is 1.32%. So what that means, because the 0.33 is the adjustment per month. If we're measuring 6 months, then it's 0.33% per month. So that means if the comp went into escrow 4 months ago, you need to add 1.32% to it. So let's show as an example. Let's say I had a comp that sold for 1.5. Then I'm going to go plus 1.32%. That means I've got to add 19,800 to that comp, and today it would sell for 1.519800. Do you see how that little detail right there starts to curate those comparables that you have in your CMA a little bit tighter? Now, we've already shown that the market is 100% of list right here. But let's just say it was 12 months ago that we were doing this, right? And if a listing on the market was on the market, let's now imagine there's deeper analysis. Like, was it properly listed? Did it in the market already exceed the entire market? Like everybody else's, 30 days on the market listing is 132. Don't use it as a listing. It's obviously overpriced or there's something wrong with the house, okay? Also pay attention to that in appraisal reports. If an appraiser hangs their value on a property that's been on the market 4 times longer than all the other comps, there's an issue, but that's not what this is about today. Okay, so let's just say it was at 150, okay? And it was, let's imagine we 12 months ago and the list price to sales price ratio was 4% over list. Then you're going to say plus 4%, okay? That's $62,000. That means that statistically should close at, now you see how that dials in the listings? All right, now listen to the next part. All right, now let's turn it back before you start looking for your comparables, right? And even before you run that 1004 MC, because that was from a macro approach. This is how I want you to start every single comp check. Don't do any more comp checks. I don't care if you've known the neighborhood for 20 years. What I find on both sides of the industry, both appraisers and real estate agents, is we subscribe to what we knew based on our experience instead of letting the data talk to us and show us new trends. You will agree that the neighborhood that you lived in 20 years ago is not the same neighborhood as it was today. Listen to the data. So here's a way that you can visualize it. So both on tophap.com, which is TOPHAP, which is now integrated into realtor.com, they have a pricing heat map. On the pricing heat map, what it does, let's see here. What it does, the darker the color, the higher the price. The lighter the color, the cheaper the price. And this helps you visualize neighborhood shifts. Okay, let me show you. All right, this is a property that I had sold, one of my old houses that I sold, I don't know, a year ago, 2 years ago. Okay, you in this right, the lighter the color, the cheaper the neighborhood. You see right here as it starts to darken up, that's identifying the hillside right here. The hill, they have a view of the other hills, right? And in my market, typically the west and the east side are the superior markets, while you have the middle is a little bit lighter. You can see that as you visualize the data. Okay. How do you use this? You want to use this to where you're sitting there, like I tell my clients, is one, use it to identify how you outline the area that you're searching for comps. Get away, don't do 1 mile radius searches anymore. Identify this. And then if you know your area switches, like you can see right here, right? You can see that is just a little bit darker than this pocket here. But let's just say your property was located right here. And you know, you have an appraiser to an appraiser coming in and just doing a 1 mile radius search and getting it wrong if they're from out of the area. You print this map off in color and you bring it and say, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Appraiser, I know you know the neighborhood. I know you've been a long time and you're a great appraiser, but I just want to identify the fact that, you know, if you're going to run comps, we have to run comps here on the west side, and we skip over the middle and we have to go over here to the east side that has the same amount of comps. Okay. Now, realtor.com. While Top Hap now integrated for free, don't there how to use it. You pull a property, whatever property, and then you're going to scroll down to where you see the area that says neighborhoods and schools. Then you click on layers. Okay. A lot of agents don't know this here. And then you say estimate of value. Okay. Now, as you see, it's this heat map that Top Hap has, and you're going to zoom out a little bit, right? And now this is a third party. Now in Top App, you don't have to buy the subscription to get to the heat map, but if that ever changes, you can just go to realtor.com. And then we see here that same heat map identifies where we want to search. So instead of it identifies the neighborhood, but also identifies the moving of the value. Now, when you go and do your search in MLS, you then want to do a polygon search. What's a polygon search? That's when you go and instead of doing a 1 mile search, you do a polygon and we identify the specific area. Again, comping out properties is difficult enough. We don't need to make it more complicated. So now we've simply identified the neighborhood that we're in. And then we go in and run the market conditions report based on that neighborhood. In some markets across the US, you're not going to have enough data. And what you want to do is you want to make sure, right? Like over here, I want to make sure that I have at least 10 data points per column at minimum, right? We should have roughly 10 to 20 in this 7 to 12 month range. But we want to make sure we have enough data. If we don't, that's when you start to expand to the zip code level. That's when you start to expand to the city or town level. It's not as good as micro analytics, but it's still better than nothing. And in some areas, it's very rural. We don't have enough data. So you want to make sure you expand to find something. And then after you have that, then you put your human insight on and say, oh, this makes sense, or no, that doesn't make sense based on what you've been feeling at open houses and so on and so forth. Okay. Now that you've adjusted the comparables, treat them as if they sold today. You can do this on a piece of paper, or, you know, like you do the CMA and do the handwriting on the end so they can see like you not only did the computer, but you know how to do it manually. CMA, you print that out. And then you say, okay, this comp sold, and you walk through it. 4 months ago, the market has moved 3%. So I'm going to adjust that comp 3% up. Okay, to show what itself for today. This comp sold, you know, when the market was a little bit higher. So we're going to adjust that one 2% down. It's okay to have multi-directional because the market doesn't move in a linear. It moves in two different directions. Okay. Then you have the listings. You tell them, all right, right now in this market for priced homes, if the list price to sales price ratio, what people ask for versus what they get, is 100% a list. So these are our natural numbers here. Then here's the next layer that you're going to go on. You're going to want to rate those individual comps. And how you do that is the same way an appraiser does it. It's what we call a condition rating. Now, I'm not going to go into all the technical details, but I'm going to summarize this for you. It's how we adjust properties that are worse, because we want to adjust all the comps as if they're the subject property. So here's the summary. A C1 property is a brand new property. Nobody's ever lived in the house ever, 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 ever. Okay. Your C2 property feels brand new. It could be 70 years old, but somebody came in, blew out every area, every material, every surface, the electrical, the plumbing, the windows, the floors, the paint, the lighting, everything. It feels brand new. Now, inside of these ranges, right, you can still be a high C2 or a low C2 or a high C2 that's basically a C1. But in the lending world, right, while we do a lot of private stuff, in the lending world, they treat it just like if I took my Porsche off of the lot, the moment I drive it off, it's worth less. I don't agree with it because a C1 and C2 could be the same, but let's move on. Then you get to a C3. That is your average property. That could have been a remodel that was 10 or 15 years ago. That could have been a split remodel where, like, the kitchen and the front area, bathroom out front, all blown out. But then they kind of run out of money. So when you get to the bedroom, like, it's Art Deco with like pink tile and shag carpet and that beautiful cultured marble. No, it could be a split. Right? Then when you get your C4, that is your property that's a little bit older. It's dated, but it's been meticulously taken care of. How I always give the example, it's like a 45-year-old guy with abs. Stop, come back to me, pay attention. Okay, so, or you can think of it as your grandfather's, where the house, it might be dated, but every single detail of that property has been meticulously maintained. Even the grout in the kitchen is still white. Now, when you get to C5, that's like the house that partied too much, right? It wasn't taken care of, might have been tenant occupied most of his life, wasn't maintained, nothing was improved, so on and so forth. Now, when you get to your C6, that's a property you're probably not going to get conventional lending on. You're going to want to go private money, hard money. And when you go to that property, you're like, immediately, like, we're not even moving in until we fix this. Okay. Basically not habitable. So what you want to do those is C1 through C6. Now, again, remember, you can be within that range. You could say, hey, I'm a low C6 or a low C3 and a high C4. But here, keep moving on. You want to honestly walk with the buyer or the seller to the house and say, you think based on this, what do you think your property rates at? Okay. You allow them to make the decision instead of you're not, it's almost like, I got jokes, but I won't go there. Okay. Moving forward. So then you look at the comparables and go through the photos with the client and you say, okay, this property, it was the highest on the CMA and it sold for, let's look through the photo. Oh, it's been completely renovated. So this we're going to mark as a C2. And then you move on down and then you say, okay, well, our property is a C3. So it's going to be no than this property that's been completely renovated because it's the principle of substitution, meaning I'm not going to pay the same price for a fixer than I for a brand new property. So we know that C2 now sets the upper limit of value for you. And we know your property's not a C4. So that other comp that sold, $100,000 less than everybody else, that's a C4. Okay, so now we're inside of this range. This, folks, is how you expand this to be more accurate. And also, when you sit down with a client and you do this, no other agent is doing it unless they've seen this video. I guarantee you, I've taught all over the nation. If you do this, you will separate yourself effortlessly and set the bar this much higher. Because right now, it's a game of separation. I hope you guys enjoyed this. If you learned something about this, please don't keep it a secret. Share with your colleagues. Let's change the level of awareness together. Also, there's a lot of stuff that I have. If you go to the link on my Instagram, right? I've got videos on how to do adjustments, how to adjust for pools and ADUs and views and square things. I also have a pricing and appraisal masterclass. And even though I'm an appraiser, we have a brand building class that is on there to show you how to 10x yourself on social media by helping more people so that you can have more leads. Thank you so much for joining me. This is Anthony Young with valuedaudit.com. And if you want to go and get the discount on my courses, okay, you want to use the discount code CMA. That will give you a discount on any of the course you pick at valuedaudit.com or the link in my bio. Thank you for joining me. Don't keep this a secret. Share with your colleagues. Let's raise the level of awareness together.